normal. We're in for a rich treat of music and language and pizza. It's like the triumvirate of great Sundays. I would like to begin by introducing you to our flutist, Mary Beth Godfrey. She's a professional musician and artist who lives in the Bloomington area. She's played the flute and multiple instruments for over 50 years, and she can be seen and heard on the streets of downtown Bloomington during the holidays. She's currently enrolled at Eastern Illinois University and hopes to obtain a master's degree in divinity. Music and the arts have made a lasting influence on her life. She loves to bring joy to people with her music. Please welcome Mary Beth Godfrey.
I think this is something most people know.
Thank you, Mary Beth. And we'd like to welcome now Albert DeGenova. He is a poet, editor, teacher, and blues saxophonist. He's the author of 5 books of poetry and 2 chapbooks. In June 2000, he launched the literary arts journal After Hours. He continues as publisher and co-editor. DeGenova holds an MFA from Spalding University in Louisville and is the retired executive director of Right On, Door County, a Wisconsin literary arts center. Welcome, Albert.
Thank you all for being here today, and it's a beautiful space. I especially want to thank Judy Valente for inviting me to be here today. And is the piece that Mary Beth just played, and for those of you who don't know, is a piece called Hallelujah, written by a very fine poet named Leonard Cohen. And my book, After Hours, actually opens up with a quote from Hallelujah. So I wasn't planning to read that, but I'll read it since she just played the song. And the quote from Leonard is, "I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I've told the truth, I didn't come to fool ya." And that's kind of the theme of this book, Human Nature, which I subtitle Poems of Witness. So I'm going to start with the title poem. It's called Human Nature. Some will follow the faint trail of blood through the fresh snow, searching for the story. Some will pay a man with a pickup truck to remove the carcass, the deer that ran, a single bullet in its belly, to die under a pine tree in my woods. Coyotes in the night mutilate the hindquarters, scrape out with sharp-clawed paws warm organs and entrails. Crows peck and pull fur and skin down to long white ribs, the pool of red and purple, the lifeless eyes of the untouched face. No one blames the coyote or crow for their hunger, nor the hunter thinking he missed who hoped to share venison with his family. Some, though, without hunger, would kneel on the dying neck, draw a handgun, and shoot 15 more holes into the hide, blaming the beautiful doe for something like running. Some would watch this quietly, some would cry out, and some would walk away to let nature take its course. Okay, I'll get louder. From up here, it sounds really loud, but I guess it isn't. This is another poem, again, bearing witness, and I refer to Ernest Hemingway in this poem because we lived in Oak Park, Illinois for 20 years, and Ernest Hemingway had grown up on the corner of the block that we lived on. This is called Living History. Hemingway's breath still lingers here on this street, my street, his street. Did he ever walk across my lawn, sit on my porch on his way to school, the same school my sons sit in now? I walk past his boyhood home, look up to his third-floor bedroom. The light is on tonight in that center window. Whose 17-year-old shadow contemplates the glory of war? Do those old floorboards still hold the crescent moons of his fingernails? If matter and energy can never be destroyed, then history is a fishbowl. We share the same water for eternity. The song Hemingway hears as he runs to catch a football is my voice, my son's piano from our open door. Then, if it's all true, I swim in the same salty Mediterranean where my grandfathers washed their feet. I touch the skin of the dead then, when I write my name in the dust on my brother's Manhattan bookshelves, and the dead know me, know I am here, now, trying to taste their history like a ripe plum, like sour mash, like all the lovers who've kissed my lover's lips. We are the ancient dirt beneath our feet, are the Nazis, the popes, the Michigan militia, all the hot dog vendors of Bourbon Street. We are the president. We are the bombs, the innocent black men dead in the street, the homeless garbage eaters. We are history. The waiter delivers our father's tabs, and we pay. We pay. This poem is an older poem written during the first Trump administration, but I think the emotions are pretty much the same. This poem is We Thought We Could. I'll hold the umbrella, your arm in mine. We'll walk through the looking glass, through the ink-filled rain, through what's left of our meaningful dream. Peer back at our scribbled vanity. We hide under desks and behind our tailored cloak of connectedness and precious handmade chapbooks. It's all too much lettuce. Our reality sandwiches, our rubber playthings, those old and dry manifestos, the barren, poison-tipped bullets of privilege are forged of synthesized metals. Where is blind Cupid's golden bow? Gone, like so many mythic dreams, ended. The alarm clock, buzz, buzz, buzzing, our awakening out of reach. We've put the pillows over our heads with easy posts and angered chairs, outstretched fingers that hope and fail to touch more than this wasted, bombed out Camelot. Transform malaise our bourgeois curse, squeeze wine from intoxicating poems, exalted, taste the prophets of jazz, of rock and roll, of benevolent science, their golden ruled breaths, and know again the black and white of sin's responsibility. The alarmed alarm shakes the yes we can dream that was America. No poetry to this dark morning, no trust for a rising sun. I've nothing to offer but my own confusion, caught between the singing Buddha and the hot smoking barrel of the dark dynamo, menacing in the machinery of the night. So I'm going to now change the mood a little and get away from the more political or sad poems and change the feel. This poem is called Lifetime Achievement Award, and it was inspired. There's a movie called Hero that stars Sam Elliott, and the theme of the movie is he's receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award, and from that movie came this poem, Lifetime Achievement Award. I want to write a poem that means nothing. No crack in the universe, no infinite ache, just a small verse for small fame, a grain of sand without an echo, just a breath fogging a teaspoon. Never to be quoted in a movie or president's speech, a small verse that my sons may remember in late June with a warm wind blowing through a cafe window, when for a small moment the Côte d'Iron and the chocolate crepe taste as large as life itself. I'm going to read a couple poems from a chapbook called Mama's Blues, only because I've been thinking about my mother lately. And this book is about my mother's decline through Alzheimer's. And even though that's a sad experience, these poems, I think, are filled with quite a bit of love in them. So there's a series in here called First Love, which is like 11 different parts. So I'm going to read a couple of the parts of that poem called First Love. You who loved me first gave me words. Now I offer them back. You forget sometimes, so I complete your sentence. You were 19 years old, counting my toes, your firstborn. We've grown up together. I was in the back seat as you learned to drive. While no one on my sidelines, you sent my uncles. Today, at 57, I'm dating myself with that, but today, at 57, I have friends your age. Time, that elastic measure, so much living between us, your life, my life, the slant rhymes I've left out. We've an unheard language. No need to read your yellowing journals, the passions you couldn't say out loud. I understand, and maybe our living is enough. You, just a few steps ahead, reaching back to take my hand. Look both ways, you say again and again. You who I loved first to the last word. And this one, another section of the longer poem. This refers to my sister who was, my mother was living with her for a while. My sister is blind. They were out for a walk together. She runs away like a wind that shakes the shutters. I've got to go. Rattles the heart of her daughter who folds her white cane into impotent, infinite chase and cries and tries and cries again. Wait, Mom, wait. Mom runs like a wind unmoored. Unleashed on an ocean of sails, her outstretched arms, those broken booms, the jibs of fear, free and falling, a wind like a breath to earth softly settles, the wordless tempest withering within. I couldn't stop, she tells her daughter, like apology, like admission, like loss, but more like disaster. And then one more from this group. I remember you with the hymnal, yours the soprano voice, ringing out above the congregation. But today there are no words to my song, no words to name the unknowable, God or death, or the answers to questions I used to ask. How do you feel? What did you eat for breakfast? I sing along with one of your DVDs, Do, a deer, a female deer, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and I'm waiting for resolution. The scale at its end, the last note wants to move, to lead to you. I hear your voice in the neatly folded pajama top at the top of the laundry basket. In the Mediterranean cookbook I read with my wife, your voice hitting the do, the tonic, loud and clear, resolved, and then an octave higher, just like Julie Andrews, just like church. And I'm going to close with a newer poem. I split my time pretty much half and half between Chicago and Door County, Wisconsin. I go back and forth pretty regularly, and there was a chamber music festival up there, and I was asked to write a poem in response to a piece that they were performing this year. And what they do is they give you the music and they don't identify the composer of the piece, they just ask you to respond. So this was a piece that was written by a female composer, and it was very much a flute piece. And I was just struck by the femininity of the flute, and this poem is about the divine feminine. It's called Goddess Awakening. Hollow stem of openings, the flute gathers herself into breath, a goddess descending. Spring water penetrating roots, moonlight entering leaves, without beginning, without end, the sound arriving before itself, remaining after it has gone. A fluttering, a floating through air, a flourish of bright feathers, and the birds know her. From branch to branch, the unseen wings mingling desire into dawn. The emphatic beseeching. Their love songs rise, their bodies overflowing their boundaries. The flute finds the dark, harsh cave of the cello. She breathes where my emptiness waits. One note lifts, another follows, circling the room like swallows riding the wind, pulsing currents, conversations of longing. I lean to her beating heart, the song of her breasts, ancient nourishment hidden in tender flesh. She is flowering, divine, feminine, each note another sunflower resisting the shadows, trembling with abundance, breath becoming bird, bird becoming wind, wind becoming song, until there is nothing left but to receive her, arms open. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Albert. Next, we welcome Judith Valente. She is the author of 2 collections of poetry and a chapbook chosen by Mary Oliver for the 2005 National Aldrich Poetry Prize. She has also written 6 spirituality titles, most recently, The Italian Soul, How to Savor the Full Joys of Life, which was the subject of a presentation she gave here at the church last summer. Judith is also a retreat director and leads a contemplative cultural culinary retreat to Italy each year. She spent much of her career as a journalist, working for the Wall Street Journal, PBS TV, and 2 national public radio affiliates. But her first love in writing has always been poetry. Please welcome Judith Valente.
Thank you. Well, thanks to everybody for coming, and thanks to Holly. She does such a terrific job here with the Discipleship Committee. So let's give Holly a hand, please. So how is my volume? Is everything okay? Can you hear me okay in the back? Okay, thank you. I spent a good deal of time as a child alone. And so poems became my companions. And as soon as I could write down words at the age of 4, I began writing poetry. Because it helped me to make sense of the world and my place in it. So in a sense, the writing of poetry became for me very early on a contemplative practice that I've nurtured throughout my life. And to this day, I still write to understand my life, and I write because I love my life. So I'd like to share with you this morning some of the poems that reflect that love. Mary Oliver begins one of her poems with the famous words, "One day you knew what you had to do and began." And most of us who are writers can pinpoint that moment, that very moment when we knew that we wanted to write and that we could do nothing other than write. So I'd like to begin with a poem that describes that moment for me, sitting beneath a fig tree of all things in my backyard in Bayonne, New Jersey, the moment I knew I wanted to be a writer. And this poem is called Becoming a Writer. Picture a wooden seat the size of a suitcase in a backyard in northern New Jersey. Above it, the fan-like leaves of a fig tree, their fine hairs. Picture the tree's small fruits dangling like teardrops, poised at any moment to drop. Then place a 10-year-old child in that spot overlooking the cross stitches of the Jersey Central Railroad, flowing on their way to anywhere and nowhere. Let the child look up at the neighbor's clothesline, strung like an electric wire, at the empty-bodied clothes, the work shirts, baby pajamas, stained white socks, woman's nightgown thinned from too much washing. Let her listen for the train's whistle, the rumbling of cars over a distant bridge, a life beyond. Let her fill each piece of clothing with a story. This is how it begins. This is how it happens on a summer afternoon. She notes the tar scent in the air, the shape of grass beneath the rubber soles of her shoes, and how the children playing in a nearby alley screech like cats in the night. She is soaring above the fig tree, writing words with air, tethered to dry ground, but walking in space. So that's what writing felt like to me at an early age. I do spend a good amount of time now each year. Al talked about his time in Door County, so my Door County sort of is Italy at this stage in my life. And this is a poem. I'm going to read a few poems that have to do with being in Italy. And this one is about seeing an elderly couple come every day to the local gelateria in the town that I was staying in, the local ice cream shop, every day at the same time. And I saw them when I was attending a writing workshop over in Italy, in Spoleto. And it was as though coming to the gelateria at this time in the afternoon was like them saying, participating in a Vespers service. And I couldn't figure out really what to write about this couple for a long time. And then one day, years later, the first line of the poem came to me, and suddenly it all fell into place. So this is a poem called Vesper Time, about this elderly couple. This is how I learned to love, watching an aging couple climb the 25 stairs from Spoleto's new quarter to the old, even on a day so hot a dropped egg fried on the stone steps. Every afternoon at 5, they arrived at the gelateria, he nearly blind, she guiding him by the arm. They ordered one scoop between them, some days nocciola, others pistachio or amarina. Always at the same table, she would dip a plastic spoon in the paper cup, and he would open his lips, receive her offering like a communion wafer. Then they headed home, the way they came, to the house I imagined, painted espresso cups, lace doilies on sofa arms, a framed image of Santa Rita di Cascia staring from a wall, another afternoon adrift in their calendar of graces. One of the other reasons I love to write poems is because in poems, the dead can come alive again. And that's what happens in this poem. One year when I was in Italy, it was August 15th, the Feast of the Assumption of Mary in the Catholic liturgical calendar. And it's a holiday for everybody in Italy. They all go to the beach. And it's called Ferragosto. But on this particular day, on this particular beach, right before our eyes, 2 young brothers drowned. They just disappeared into the heavy undertow. And so we were all watching this kind of happen in real time, and it was very heartbreaking. So I wanted these boys to be remembered. I wanted them to live in the poem. So the poem is written in the voice of one of the drowned brothers. And it's called Ferragosto, which is 15th of August in Italian, that's what they call it. And it begins with an epigraph. On August 15th, 2019, 2 brothers, ages 7 and 9, drowned in the Adriatic Sea on the Feast of the Assumption, a holiday known in Italy as Ferragosto. We thought the water was a blanket we could throw over our heads and pull down again, the sea a bed we could rise from. It was the Feast of the Assumption when Mary enters paradise, her body assumed, whole, uncorrupted. The hungry sea consumed my brother and me, fickle in its calm demeanor. We held each other's hands, tumbled into the water's salty mouth. At first, it was exciting, the way our Father sometimes rolled us over in his arms. We became fish caught in the rock's toothy jaws until we separated into a silent blindness. I remembered running between trees, how a soccer ball feels, the scent of my mother's skin, the touch of my father's rough hands. And then I surrendered to the wordless, undulating movement. Soon, my brother and I were floating above the beach. Women we did not know clasped hands to their mouths. Tears ran down their tanned faces. Men I did not recognize made the sign of the cross. Our Father held our mother as she bowed and moaned. A pair of white gulls left Y-shaped prints in the sand. Then I was alone. Then the birds grew silent. So a little little eulogy for those two boys that I'll never forget. I'm going to skip ahead here a bit and read another poem, just a couple more, on to something more pleasant about spending time in Italy. I truthfully, when I spent 3 months there the last time, couldn't believe how lucky I was to be living this life over there and meeting the people I was meeting. So I tried to write a poem that distilled what my everyday life was like. And this is the poem that came out of that. There's a couple of Italian words in here. La Madonna del Carmine is Our Lady of Mount Carmel. It's my favorite church in the little town that I was staying in. And Dom Erminio is the parish priest. And then the poem, there's a couple of other words that are self-explanatory, but the poem ends with the word buondì, which is kind of an archaic word that Italians use to say good day or hello, buondì. It literally means good day. So here's a little poem about living in Italy. It's called At Home. The woman who owns the weary-looking pizzeria sometimes sings in the piazza, bursts with a dialect I don't understand, her thick black hair streaming behind her. She has few reasons to sing, husband dead at a young age, raising 2 daughters, and only the same old men come as customers. This morning at La Madonna del Carmine, Dom Erminio tells the usual half-dozen regulars to keep doing good, even if their efforts seem like a droplet. We are both the drop and the ocean, Dom Erminio says. In late afternoon, the children run out of the Scuola Elementare, waving their construction paper drawings at parents and grandparents who wait to hug them beside parked cars, as if all the children in the world could be so loved. I know it's not true. Sometimes I walk among the hollyoaks in the piazza, collect seeds that look like wooden beads, arrange them in patterns on my bookshelves. Sometimes it feels as though I am moving through a dream, like the one last night where I was dancing on a Broadway stage. My partner lifted me, swung me around, and we twirled in the air. The church bells sound the hours, remind me this is my life. Silent Mount Maiella, its slopes of pines standing at attention, the sweet-smelling sheets flapping over balcony railings, and the flatbed truck that sputters up a hill as its driver, Vincenzo, shouts into a loudspeaker, "Carciofoli, mandarini, pepperoni, patate." My neighbors appear from behind faded doors. They wave and call to me, "Buondì." They welcome me home. So a little bit of that, little taste of Italy. Now, Al read a lovely series of poems, really, about his mother. So I wanted to read a poem about my father. You know, as we get older, I think we understand our parents more as characters, and give them the credit that they're due, that we probably didn't give them when we were younger. And Al wrote those beautiful poems about his mother. You know, again, a tribute to letting the dead come alive again. So here's a poem about my father. His name was Charlie, like my husband. It's called My Father's Down Vest. When I put on the olive green vest my father wore to ward off drafts, I become someone who never exceeded the speed limit. In 40 years of driving a Mack truck, never had an accident, was philosophically opposed to washing cars, saying, "That's what rain's for." I become someone who counseled his volatile daughter, "You catch more flies with honey." That there are 2 things in life to remember: When you're hungry, you eat. When you're tired, you sleep. I become a man who never read Tennessee Williams, but clipped a photo from the Daily News of ice-covered trees, titled it The Glass Menagerie, and taped it to our basement wall. The vest shines in worn spots, is still soft and plush. Enough emptiness there for the freedom of arms, pockets large enough for a few coins, a handkerchief, some peppermints, rubber bands. When I put on my father's down vest, I become straight, like an iris among nettles, releasing a scent of peace, unscathed by surrounding thorns, a singular bloom in an overgrown garden. And this is the two-poem warning. Our friend Larry Janowski, another poet, used to say, well, this is the two-poem warning, meaning there's only 2 more poems you have to listen to. This is one I wanted to try out here among our community here, because I have so much respect for the Mennonite Church as a peace church and a social justice church. So this is also a new poem. Al was brave enough to read one of his new poems. This is a new poem that I wrote just a couple of months ago after the start of the Iran war. And there's some headlines. It mentions some headlines in between the stanzas. And it's called, "My Country at War, I Dream of Peace." When I lay my ear on the pillow, I hear a sound like a waterfall, and remember there is a river cascading inside of me. When I walk, the wind is my breath, the clouds my ancestors, the sorghum trees my compass, and the moon my nighttime companion. Alone, leaves float silently beside me, no longer strangers. The sky is the ocean I travel, seeking coral reefs of calm. Strike on girls' school in Iran becomes war's deadliest attack. Purple martins nest in white boxes by a lakeside. I know them by their acrobatics, their velvet color, shake and rattle call. They reverence the common table, eat, then make room for others. Not like the rich man in Luke who cannot bear to share even with a beggar. The war is depriving households in Iran of basic staples, intensifying hunger. What would it take to entice a song sparrow to rest on my arm? Perhaps only a piece of dry bread in my extended hand. Ask St. Francis. What is fraternity anyway but a crust of bread, broken and shared? What is peace but a singing river, a ginkgo leaf placed atop a purple martin's nest as the female readies to lay her eggs, extend life? Perhaps peace is a flock of saffron-robed monks walking 2,300 miles. U.S. remains locked and loaded to restart military campaign, Trump says, as Iran warns of new fronts. A solitary squirrel contemplates a single acorn in a field of grass. A night-blooming cactus swallows its serpent self, opens its many arms to a life within darkness. So that was a poem that tried to find life in what I felt was a dark moment for our country. So I will end with the title poem of my collection, How to Be a Contemplative. And it's something that I've spent my life trying to figure out. So it helped to try to put it into words. How to be a contemplative. Find a window, sit by it, Stare at the flower box of cosmos, the bees that kiss the blooms and move on. Sit not just for 2 minutes, but linger there. Waste time. Forget the laundry, the grocery list, the buzzing phone, the writing that waits. Imagine sitting on a shoreline, listening to the endless rumor of the sea. Imagine rising and falling like the tide. Our mistakes are doors. Our successes melt quickly on the tongue. The face you soon will see in the mirror is the face of every person you've ever met. It opens like a book of singular stories, unfolding, encompassing everything: the bee stings, bird song, night sweats, sunrises, sunsets, discoveries, losses. All of it good, all of it a placeholder for meaning. Then listen for the one word you yearn to hear, the voice that calls you by name, that calls you beloved. Thank you. And we'll have Mary Beth come up and play a song, and then we'll have our esteemed special guest, Steve Vogel, come up.
Thank you, Al, for reminding me to tell people what I'm playing. This is a song, I believe, written and sung by Anya. It's called Pilgrim. I tried to shape the songs I'm playing to the poetry that
Next, we welcome Steve Vogel. Steve Vogel is a familiar voice to most in McLean County. For many years, he worked at WJBC Radio, where he hosted a daily talk show and headed the station's award-winning news department, while also doing commentaries on the Voice of America. He later headed the media relations department of State Farm and served the company's chairman and CEO as a communications assistant. He retired from that position in 2012 and returned to his print journalism roots by writing an opinion page column for the Pantograph. Steve grew up in Minonk, attended Illinois Wesleyan for his undergraduate degree before earning a master's degree in journalism from Northwest University. So he is an Illinoisan through and through. He's written a wonderful memoir about growing up in McLean County and working here in broadcast journalism. He'll be reading an excerpt from that book, Broadcast Live. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Holly. I gotta say, I kind of feel like a corn dog that showed up at a pizza party. No one came here for that, you know, but here I am anyway. I'm going to read a little bit from Broadcast Live. The subtitle of the book is 71 True Stories, including some I just as soon forget. This title, this chapter is called Dairy's Discipline. Can you hear me okay? Subtitled A Work Ethic Utterly Imposed. Want to instill a strong work ethic in your kids? Be the sole operator of a dairy farm. I was still a year or two away from high school when my parents realized their two sons probably would want to go to college, and their 120-acre grain and livestock farm was incapable of delivering sufficient cash to cover college costs. Turning it into a dairy farm could, they reasoned, it also would turn their lives upside down. I don't know whether their master plan included the benefit of being able to infuse a sense of responsibility, hard work, and punctuality into their sons, but that's the way it worked out. More on that in a minute. But first, I must note some research that says 16 million Americans believe chocolate milk comes only from brown cows. The following public service paragraph is for them. Brown cows produce white milk. So do black and white cows, yellow and white cows, tan cows, black cows, even red cows. If the cow's milk is not white, you don't want to drink it. Unless chocolate's been added to it, giving it a sweet taste and brown color. The next time you drink chocolate brown milk, know it's been modified by human hands, or at least hope it has. Okay, now about the work ethic. If a dairy cow is producing milk at a steady rate, it's because they've recently delivered a baby calf. At the peril of upsetting animal rights activists, dairy farmers make sure the calf is no longer handy to drink the milk, allowing the dairy to harvest and sell the milk. Cows need to have their milk taken from them at least twice a day, typically in the early morning and again in the early evening. Otherwise, the cow's udder, the bovine version of a tote bag, becomes painfully full and heavy as the day goes on, and future milk production is diminished. Dairy farmers want more milk, not less. To repeat, cows are milked at least twice a day, not 5 days a week, not 6 days a week, every day of every week, even Christmas morning, Thanksgiving evening, New Year's Eve, and before Sunday morning church. On the coldest winter day when water lines freeze, and on the hottest summer day when flies play war thunder on manly perspiration. When you're sick, when you're tired, when you're sick and tired, you still must milk. Dad's dairy herd totaled about 70 Holstein cows, the classic black and white bovines in ice cream commercials, half of which would be producing milk at any given time, a challenge for any one person, but not big enough to justify hiring part-time help. That's where two sons, 9 years apart in age, came in. It took about 90 minutes each morning and 90 minutes each evening to relieve each of the some 3 dozen cows of their 3 or 4 gallons of milk. With the typically begrudging assistance of one of his two sons, Dad milked every morning and every evening, starting when I was 12 and ending a few days after my much younger brother graduated from college 19 years later. Let's see. Multiply 365 days times twice a day times 19 years, and I come up with 13,870 milkings. Discount the few leap days thrown in there because my dad took one vacation. Yes, you read that right, one vacation during those 19 years. A week-long trip with my brother to visit some World War II buddies on the Gulf Coast. It was a summer when I was in college, working a 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. shift in the sports department of the daily newspaper 30 miles away. Mom had stayed behind to help. Together, we disturbed the cows' usual schedule, tending to them early in the afternoon before I went to work, and then again after I arrived home, the freshly printed newspaper in hand, 10 hours before the rural mailman would deliver it. It was Holstein Hell Week. Lots of work, little sleep. My inclination toward not making dairy farming part of my life had been validated. And I suspect my newspaper workmates were wondering why the kid on the sports desk smelled like he'd been covering the county fair. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our readers and musicians. Oh, I'm so sorry. Welcome back, Mary Beth.
I'm going to end on Simon and Garfunkel, the sound of silence.
going to invite you to take a deep breath. Let the silence fall back over those words, those notes, and settle in you. And thank you so much to our participants today for gifting us, gracing us with your words, your music. It's been a gift. And there's more gifts to come. Pizza is here. You're welcome to, make your way back to the round tables. There's a veggie option, a cheese option, I think a supreme and a pepperoni. It's just pizza. And drinks. Take some time to settle in, meet the people around you, greet the people around you, and then after things have settled down for a bit, we'll invite people to, and time for open mic. If you brought a poem to share, you'll be welcome to come on up and share that with us. So again, thank you so much. Enjoy the pizza.